The Supreme Court has just rejected a controversial settlement with OxyContin maker Purdue Pharma. For context, Purdue Pharma made its fortune on aggressive and allegedly unethical marketing of OxyContin. It has long been cited as a catalyst of the nationwide opioid epidemic that has claimed the lives of thousands of Americans. The settlement would have shielded members of the Sackler family, who owned Purdue Pharma, from civil lawsuits over the impact of opioids. But at the same time, under the agreement, the Sacklers would have given up the company and would have given billions to combat the opioid epidemic. The settlement also provided that Purdue Pharma would emerge from bankruptcy as a different entity, with its profits being used for prevention and treatment purposes.
In the 5-4 vote, Justice Gorsuch wrote for the majority, found that, quote, the Sacklers seek greater relief than a bankruptcy discharge normally affords, for they hope to extinguish even claims for wrongful death and fraud, and nothing in present law authorizes the Sackler discharge. Justices Kavanaugh, Jackson, Kagan, and Sotomayor dissented. Kavanaugh wrote, quote, opioid victims are now deprived of the substantial monetary recovery that they long fought for and finally secured after years of litigation, and opioid victims and other future victims of mass torts will suffer greatly in the wake of today's unfortunate and destabilizing decision. The Biden administration has argued that if the court were to stop the agreement, further negotiations could lead to a better deal for victims. So it was Gorsuch, Thomas, Alito, Barrett, Jackson. I have to double check if I read that right. I'm not sure that I did. In the majority, with Kavanaugh, Roberts, Sotomayor, and Kagan in the minority. So the three liberal justices were split. It was two liberals in the minority with two of the conservatives, and then Jackson, the other liberal, in the majority with the rest of the conservatives. So this is an ideologically mixed case. It's a little bit confusing. But basically, the situation is that the majority said this deal, while giving billions to victims of, or for help with rehabilitation of opioids and dealing with this structured bankruptcy of Purdue Pharma, the majority said this deal is still too favorable to the Sackler family because it will stop future people from bringing claims against the Sacklers due to wrongful death from opioids. So they said it was too good, the deal, and that was not fair to other people who might want to pursue legal action against the Sacklers. So it is thrown out for that reason. So there are some people who were going to get a lot of money under the current deal who are victims of the Sacklers and of Purdue Pharma, who are very upset about it. There are others who say, well, no, they should have to pay even more, and maybe other people who want to bring future claims. So those people are happy about it. So it's kind of a mixed decision all over the place. You can see it as some are saying, well, without this decision in place, we're effectively depriving, tons of people from settlement money that they were going to get as a result of this decision. Others saying, but that was still going to be too favorable to the Sacklers, so we got to try to get a better deal, or one that holds them accountable for this horrible opioid epidemic that has claimed the lives of thousands of Americans.
Right. It's one of those Supreme Court cases where there's not a homogenous reason for being in the majority or the dissent. It seems that some of the justices are of the belief that perhaps, the corporation itself should be responsible rather than the family, that it's too harsh on the Sacklers, and some believe it's not harsh enough. Let's not forget that this came out of a sweetheart deal from the George W. Bush administration. In 2007, prosecutors recommended felony charges against the executives of Purdue Pharma, and this was the result of George W. Bush not wanting to pursue that kind of legal action and instead doing this settlement. So while, yes, it would allow people to additionally sue for Purdue Pharma's ramifications of getting them addicted to OxyContin, wrongful death suits, and things of the like. But also what this deal did was protect them from criminal prosecution, which is significant if you consider the fact that George W. Bush has received donations from the Sackler family, that Big Pharma funded his very glitzy inauguration to the tune of $1.7 million. $1 million. And so thinking about this close connection of the George W. Bush administration and Big Pharma, it feels like classic legal but questionable American corruption. And I'll also say that it's not it shouldn't be taken lightly that they were ready to pursue criminal charges. They found emails in exchange of executives at Purdue Pharma, including with the Sackler family, who were very involved and were the owners of the company at the time, where they knew how addictive OxyContin is, and they knew its street value. They were talking about how it can be marked up 259%, and that there would be such a demand for it because people were addicted to the drug and using it on the streets, not for its intended medical purpose.
Yeah, it's a fascinating outcome that does, in fact, clear the way to doing that if there's a bold enough system to prosecute, to actually bring criminal charges for what has gone wrong in America, for all of the deaths of despair and devastation that has been wrought by opioid addiction. The drug being the way it was marketed, many people say lend itself toward easy addiction, that it was not clear to people exactly how addictive it is. And the Sacklers haven't had any involvement in Purdue Pharma since 2020. They've tried to get out of it, avoid the spotlight, and they were going to give several billions for rehabilitation under the deal, but they were not going to be prosecuted as a result. So, very interesting decision.
Right. I don't know if it's satisfactory for a lot of the families that have been affected by the opioid crisis, with over 200,000 people losing their lives in the past 2 decades credited to the opioid crisis in the United States. And for a company and their executives to willingly market this to anyone who will buy it because they can enrich themselves, knowing the damage that it would cause, it is something that in my heart of hearts I believe is wrong criminally. And I don't think $8 billion is sufficient to repair what's happened. And so it's a difficult decision for the Supreme Court to make, because now, will we get the $6 billion
right now you might
or
get
more, or will we get nothing? Will we get less? That's
what I'm seeing. This decision obviously is just breaking. We're familiarizing ourselves with it. I'm reading the reaction on social media, and there's a lot of that sentiment. I see a lot of people celebrating that this deal got thrown out, because now there is an opportunity to have proper accountability. At the same time, now there could be no accountability, and people who had been harmed or claimed they'd been harmed by Purdue Pharma were going to get payments, were going to get money as a result of this deal, and right now they're not going to get anything. Now maybe they'll get even more, maybe more people will get compensated, or nothing could happen. So I can see why people are a bit torn on whether this is a good outcome or not, but I can also see why it's a little bit like the Hunter Biden plea deal. The judge says, well, this actually shields you from the future prosecutors going after the thing people really care about, the influence peddling, the really serious potential criminal allegations. Not saying they've been proven or that there's anything necessarily to them, but it was going to be him being pleading guilty on some relatively trivial stuff, with the more serious stuff put away, and the judge found that unsatisfying. So there's kind of echoes of that here.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting ruling, and I think there's enough energy around the opioid crisis that those who are disappointed by it, I think we're going to see more come out of this. J.D. Vance, who's had close proximity to Donald Trump, is floated as potentially a VP pick. This is an issue that he's made center to his political persona. And so I'm very curious to see if we see more of the same, of Republican administrations being very friendly to pharmaceutical companies, or if Trump and potentially J.D. Vance as well are going to sort of crack down on this thing. If we're going to see the Justice Department under Biden decide to pursue legal action in a similar fashion to how prosecutors in the DOJ under the W. Bush administration recommended further legal action and criminal prosecution, I'm sure the Biden administration's DOJ is going to be busy reviewing documents and reviewing the evidence and considering bringing forth criminal charges again.
Well, we'll see if either of them get asked about this at the debate tonight.
That would be very
a good question of how they plan to obtain accountability from this company that created so much harm nationwide. That would be a good thing to ask both candidates, whether they plan to pursue those charges now that that option is available to the U.S. government. More Rising right after this.